and welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to be telling you about a confession that I don't know if what he was saying was the complete truth, but obviously there's no way to know because there was only two people involved. Before I get into it, I do need to say that there is a discussion about domestic violence in this video, so if this isn't for you, then that's okay. I will see you in the next one. But for those of you that are still interested, let's go. Okay, so we are located in Milwaukee. Is that how you say it, Milwaukee? And it's the evening of March 31st, 2022. And a man walks into the police station straight up to the front desk and says, "I shot my girl a day and a half ago." At first, the officer behind the desk is like, "Okay, can I take some details? Have you got any ID on you?" Because they thought that it was a crime that had already been reported and it was somebody turning themselves in. So they thought it was already in the system. So they were trying to find which crime he was confessing to. When they asked him for his ID, he said, "All I've got on me is my wallet and some gum and his house keys." Eventually they asked him what his name is, and it's Ellis Mitchell. Time goes by and Ellis Mitchell is still stood at the desk because the officers are still trying to figure out what crime it is. One of the officers come back to the one at the desk and says, "Nothing's coming back in our database." So then the officer at the desk asks, were you supposed to turn yourself in here or at one of the jails? What's going on? And then Ellis Mitchell said, "No, I just walked in here." So again, they asked him what he had done and he said, "I shot my girl. We were horse playing around and I held a gun up to her and it went off and shot her." They asked him how long ago it was and he said a day and a half. And he said that he just sat there with her for a while. They then asked him if she was still alive and he just bluntly said no. After the officers realised what was happening here, that this guy had just come in to confess and it hadn't been reported before, they went, "Oh, okay," then walked round to the front of the desk and handcuffed him. At first he asked if he could be handcuffed at the front because it hurts too much at the back, but they said no because, they have to do it at the back. And now that makes you think, how often have you been in handcuffs? Is this a usual thing for you? But then when the police did further investigations into this guy, they couldn't find anything. He had never been reported for a crime, ever. They decided to put 2 handcuffs on him. I don't know why. Maybe because, he's just confessed to a murder. Good trail of thought, Nick. As they were handcuffing him, they asked him, where did this happen? And he said, "Well, we were just playing around in the bedroom and that's where I shot her. And because she was bleeding a lot, I took her to the basement. And now she's just laying by the sink." He said that he had sat down there with her for about 7 hours just thinking about what's happened and said that he knows now his life is gone. His life's over. To which the officer responded, "It takes a real man to come in here and confess to this stuff." I mean, I know the police officers have to be calm and collected and just be calm because you don't want things to escalate. I get that. But it takes a real man. It would take a real man to not pick up a gun in the first place. Anyways. The officer goes on to say that it's only you, her, and God that knows what happened. And I commend you for that. And then Mitchell's just yeah, that's a whole other thing that God knows. He's then asked, where's the gun? Is it still with her? Is it in the house somewhere? And he said, no. When I left her, I drove just off of 50th and dumped it in the dumpster. It's things like this where I'm just are you telling the truth? Because if you've gone to dump it somewhere, then you're coming in to confess. Was it an accident? Was it were you gonna run away? And then thought, no. I don't believe that this man just went, okay, I'm gonna go turn myself in, leaves the house, but then throws away the weapon and then goes to the police station. There must have been some other thought there, but the officer said, it's just him, her, and God that knows what happened. He's then asked again, what's the address? So he tells the officers his address and then says, the keys are right in my pocket. And then the officer says, it's okay for us to go there and search, because obviously they can't enter a property without a warrant. Does that still stand in these cases? Anyway, they asked for his permission to enter the property and he says, yes, of course. Whilst they're just waiting around, the officer and Mitchell just have, a little conversation, and Mitchell turns to the officer and says, "I'm looking at about 80 years, aren't I?" To which the officer responds, to be honest with you, that's going to be up to the judge. Now the officer that's with Mitchell is trying to just, put a timeline together. So he starts questioning when this happened. Obviously we know it was like a day and a half ago, but they want to know, like, was it in the morning, afternoon, nighttime, like when? So he says it happened at about 2 a.m. the day before. He then asks where on the body was she shot, and he says in the head. He questions what gun was used, and he just said a 380. He doesn't know what make. They move him to a back room in the police station because now they're sending out 4 police officers to the scene, to the house where the girlfriend of Ellis Mitchell has allegedly been shot. 2 officers pull up to the house and 2 officers are already there. The 2 that are already at the front door have no idea why they've been sent there. They don't know that there's apparently a dead body inside. They don't know they really don't know what they're searching for. They try to use the key to open up the door, but they can't get in. So they find a door around the side and try and use the key on that, but still doesn't work. So they get in touch with the officers back at the station with Ellis and say, can you ask him, how do we get in with these keys? Like, what door do they work on? Like, help. And Ellis said, yeah, it's the front door that the keys work on. So they tried again and again and again, but it still didn't work. So they had to resort to forced entry. 3 of the officers, step back a little bit because things are about to get a little violent, while one officer starts kicking the door down. At first it does not budge, but eventually the door caves in. As soon as they enter the property, they immediately start shouting, like, police department, Milwaukee police, we know you're in here. And they just, as they're searching through the entire house, that's all they keep saying is, Milwaukee police, we know you're in here. Now, this house it's 2 floors. There's 2 different tenants in this house. So they were on the bottom floor. So it kind of goes in like a circle type thing, like each room like weaves into the other. So they're all searching through, still shouting, Milwaukee police, we know you're in here, until eventually one group of police officers are in the kitchen and there's another one the other side, and there's like a door in between, and while he's searching here, they're like, Milwaukee police, we know you're in here, because they can hear someone, and he's just like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, it's me, I'm on the other side of the door, because he was scared that they were going to shoot him. Eventually, they recall what Ellis Mitchell had said and head to the basement. And when they approach the room, all you hear from the officer that looks in is, and then follows with, yep, there's a dead body in here. They then immediately call for more squads and a boss. The first thing they're asked is, what's the injury? So the officers go back into the room where the victim is laying, and after observing her, they say that it's a GSW to the head, which means gunshot wound to the head. The victim was later identified as Angela Lane. Once they got all the information they need for the responders, they clear the basement until they get there. And then one of the officers call down and say, have the tenants upstairs been notified? Like, has anybody spoken to them? And everyone's like, oh no, like, we've been too busy sweeping all of this. So they were like, okay, we need to go upstairs and talk to the tenants. When they get up there, they say, we're Milwaukee Police Department. There's been a shooting. Did you hear anything? They said, no, like, we didn't hear a thing. So then the officers say, okay, stay in here, and if you have any questions, just come and ask us. But don't come down this hallway. Like, is there another way you can get out? And they said, yes, like, there's another exit. So they say, okay, use that. Do not come down this hallway. I don't know what it would do if somebody knocked on my door and said that. Just like, by the way, they've been shot. Don't leave your house. I'm sorry? One of the officers at the scene asked around, like, how did you find out about this? And they said, oh, a man walked into the police station and said, I shot my girl like a day and a half ago. And then the officer that asked said, oh, why do people keep coming into the district like this? And then, like, they're just having a little small chatter and saying, I don't know, they just want to try and make our jobs easier on us. They asked Ellis Mitchell, again, for a detailed description of what happened. And he said, we were both just horseplaying around and she was on the floor. She then jokingly said something to him, to which he responded by pulling out a pistol from his pocket and then pointed it at her head with his finger on the trigger. She then hit the gun and it went off and shot her in the head. Apparently, she just took one breath and then went silent. He then said that he didn't know what to do, like he was just taken back. So at first he moved her from the bedroom to the living room, put her in a chair. He then said that she began like oozing blood from her head. He was worried about getting blood all over the house, so he moved her to the basement. and positioned her body so that her headshot wound was in a sink. In that situation, why would you be more worried about getting blood over the house than calling for help for your girlfriend? Nick, you are simply just telling a story. You don't need to deep it. He then went around the house and cleaned up all the blood. He didn't want any traces of it around the house, apparently. He then went back to the basement to sit with Angela for about 7 hours, just thinking, contemplating and smoking before leaving the house with the gun to dispose of it, somewhere in the area of Villard Avenue. He then called his sister and asked her to drive him to the police station, where he turned himself in. Ellis Mitchell entered a plea of not guilty for his 1 count of first-degree intentional murder with a modifier for use of a dangerous weapon. His bond was originally set to $250,000, but then was officially set at $75,000. Ellis never posted bail. He stayed in jail until the trial, which was in April of 2023, over a year after his arrest. When it got to trial, 43-year-old Ellis Mitchell was found guilty of first-degree intentional murder. He was sentenced to 33 years in prison and 10 years of probation. And it is very likely that he will have to serve his entire sentence because the judge ruled that he was not eligible for the types of programs that would help reduce your sentence, meaning that he won't get out of prison until he's about 75 years old. And then he's got that extra 10 years of probation afterwards, which means he'll be 85 years old when it's over. After the news broke about Angela's death, her loved ones gathered around to express how they felt, speaking outwardly, saying that we don't need to be in relationships like that. We don't need to be in relationships where things like that are going to happen. There's going to be people that love us unconditionally. We don't need those situations. In the weeks leading up to her death, there are some kind of chilling Instagram posts that Angela had posted. Some of them reading, "I'm so obsessed with my man. Never in my life have I ever been so sure about anybody. When you know, you know." And another one saying, "Your relationship is supposed to be your safe haven and happy place, not another battle you have to fight." So it's kind of like this is why I don't know, was he telling the truth, was he not? Because it's like everyone around her is now saying, you don't need to be in those types of relationships, like you don't need to be with somebody that's going to do that. But then her social media posts are saying otherwise, that she was beyond happy, that she was so in love. So this is the annoying thing about this. It's only him and her that know what really happened. I really don't know what to think about this case. Like I keep saying, was he telling the truth? Was he not? We don't know, and that's the really annoying thing. In the end of it all, he did kill someone. He did pull out a gun for no reason, and now he's been sentenced for his crime. That brings us to the end of this week's video, and if you did enjoy, like and subscribe, you know where the buttons are. I will be back next week with a brand new true crime story, and I hope to see you there.